If you've ever found yourself lying in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, and the thought drifts in, I wish I just wouldn't wake up tomorrow, I want you to hear me say you are not alone. For some people, it's not a dramatic moment. It's really subtle. You're at work, you're brushing your teeth, you're scrolling on your phone, and the thought just kind of slips in. You don't necessarily have a plan, but it's there. And it can really feel both terrifying and strangely ordinary at the same time. So take a second right now. Does that sound familiar? If it does, I want you to notice what happens in your body when you admit that to yourself. Do you feel a little tension in your chest, maybe a pit in your stomach, maybe even some relief? That experience is what we call passive suicidal ideation, and it matters. Even if you tell yourself, I'd never act on it, the fact that your brain is even offering up that option means it's carrying a level of pain or exhaustion that deserves to be taken seriously. So we're going to talk about what this actually means and why understanding it might be one of the most important steps that you can take for your own mental health. Okay, so let's start here with a clear definition. Passive suicidal ideation isn't about wanting to end your life in a specific way. It's about wanting something to end. So that could be the stress, that could be the numbness, the constant self-criticism, the emptiness. A lot of people describe it less as a wish to die and more as a wish to stop existing. It's like wanting to hit a pause button on life because the weight you're carrying just feels too heavy. It's important to recognize that the presence of these thoughts doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you dramatic or dangerous. They're often a signal, a kind of warning that your mind and body are under too much strain. And that strain could come from depression, sometimes trauma, sometimes a buildup of stress that you've been carrying kind of alone for too long. So when those thoughts appear, your brain is essentially saying, I can't keep doing this like I have been doing it. It's looking for a way out, even if you don't want that way out to be ending your life. Now, some people hear the term passive and active suicidal ideation and think, okay, so passive isn't as serious, but it's actually not that simple. Things like active suicidal thoughts, having a plan, an intent, or preparing to act definitely signal an immediate urgent risk. That's when you really need that support right away. But passive thoughts matter just as much because they can be a gateway. Many people who reach the point of making plans started with passive thoughts that they kind of brushed aside. The line between passive and active isn't always clear, and it can shift quickly, especially when life throws in new stressors, right? So not having active thoughts is no excuse to downplay what you're currently experiencing. You need to recognize both active and passive ideation as signals that deserve a lot of attention. Ignoring passive ideation because it feels less serious is sort of like, ignoring chest pain because it's not a full-blown heart attack, right? You still need to get it checked out because your body is telling you something really, really important. So you might be in a place where you're certain you'd never act on those thoughts, but do not dismiss them. Those are your mind's way of saying, I'm not okay right now. So what do you actually do if you're in this place? Well, the number one thing you shouldn't do is push the thoughts away, right? That rarely works. The goal isn't to erase them. It's to really understand and respond to what they're telling you. And different things work for different people, but if you bear with me, I can give you an idea of what that entire journey can look like. So the first thing that usually happens is you start by acknowledging these thoughts, not judging yourself for them, but simply noticing. Okay, I'm having a thought that I don't want to be here anymore, right? That acknowledgement, that sounds small, but it really matters. And then you share them with someone safe. Maybe that's a therapist. Maybe it's a trusted friend. This is so important because when you speak them out loud, you interrupt the shame. In therapy terms, it's corrective. So the act of sharing these thoughts creates new evidence for your brain. Instead of, I'm alone with this, so it must be bad, it becomes, I shared it and I was met with understanding. So maybe I'm not as unworthy as this shame tells me. And usually when you check in afterward, you notice the thoughts don't feel quite as heavy maybe as they once did, and it's really not a secret anymore. From there, you move to therapy to start to explore what's underneath that ideation, right? Maybe it's depression convincing you nothing will change. Or maybe it's trauma that makes you feel like you're stuck in the past. Maybe it's anxiety or the belief that you're a burden, right? So different therapies help with different root causes. And you can uncover these things through a variety of therapeutic interventions. First one is CBT. It helps challenge the hopeless thoughts that feed suicidal ideation. Another is DBT, that builds skills for tolerating overwhelming emotions without needing an escape hatch. Trauma-focused therapies also help process painful memories so they don't keep fueling that feeling of despair. As you go, you keep checking in with yourself and your therapist. How strong are these thoughts this week? Are they fading? Are they staying the same? Or even getting more intense? That tracking really matters because it shows progress you might not otherwise notice. Meanwhile, you begin adding in behavioral shifts. So things like getting regular sleep, having structured routines, moving your body, or setting aside time for connection. These aren't just surface fixes, they literally change how your brain regulates mood and stress. So over time, you'll find that passive thoughts become less frequent and less sticky. And here's the part that you might not notice when you're in the middle of it. With enough consistency, the thoughts stop being your background noise. You'll start to notice small things like laughing with a friend, enjoying a meal, feeling proud after finishing something, right? These little things that remind you life can hold meaning again. That's how people move from passive suicidal ideation to a place where they're not just surviving, but actually starting to feel hopeful and even optimistic again about life. So if you're listening to this and thinking, that sounds like me, I want you to remember this. Passive suicidal thoughts don't mean that you want to die. They mean you want something about your life to change, right? And that change is possible. So if you're looking for more support in dealing with these thoughts, you can always schedule a chat with us here at the first link in the description, or even check out our website for more resources. Thank you so much for watching today, and I hope to see you again very soon.